Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. It is Gina here, and welcome back to Feminine Roadmap Inspires. And today, our storyteller is Lisa Z. Lindahl. She is the inventor of the very first sports bra in 1977, and she's the author of Unleash the Girls, the Untold Story of the Sports Bra and How It Changed the World and Me. So without further ado, Lisa, thank you so much for saying yes to me.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Gina. This is going to be fun.
It is going to be fun. And I want to let everybody know that behind Lisa is her art studio. So if you see the beautiful art behind Lisa, she is also an artist. But today she's going to be sharing her story, just how she invented the sports bra and the journey that took her on. So without further ado, Lisa, please share, what was it that led you on this journey to invent the sports bra?
Oh, wow. Well, I was in my mid-20s, believe it or not. I mean, this happened a long time ago. It was in the mid-70s. And I was a young woman, and I was married, and I'd put on a little weight, and I knew that dieting wasn't going to do anything. It was the beginning of the fitness revolution. Everyone had started jogging, jogging. And a friend said to me, "Hey, Lisa, just run 1 mile, mile and a quarter, just 3 times a week, and you'll lose weight." And I went, "Oh, well, I could do that. I suppose I could do that." Because, I tell you what, I had not been a jock growing up. I had been one of those kids that tried to stay away from gym class and all that. But I thought, I'll try this running thing. And I fell in love with it. I loved running. And we didn't know about endorphins or all that stuff back then. We had no idea. But I started running, well, when I started running, let me tell you, I couldn't even get around the indoor track, which was 1/10 of a mile, once. So when I made it around 10 times on my lunch hour, I thought I had won the Olympics when I did a whole mile. But when I got really hooked was when I was running outdoors, and it was so beautiful. And I became friends with my body again, and the outdoors was beautiful, and the smell of the outdoors, and just connecting with the earth. And I was hooked. I never competed. I was never interested in the competition part of running. But I just loved it. And the only problem was my breasts. They were bouncing uncomfortably, and the bra that I was wearing, the straps fell down, and I was always hauling them up, and it was just not comfortable. And I thought, how can I fix this? Actually, it started as a joke. I mean, my sister started running later, like a year or so later, and she called me up and she said, "What do you do about these, the girls? What do you do about the girls? They're so uncomfortable. What do you do?" And I said, "I don't know." And she said, "Why isn't there a jock strap for women?" We laughed. We thought that was so funny. And she said, "Yeah, same problem, just different part of the anatomy." And I went, "Yeah." And I took, it started out as a joke, but I took it seriously. I thought, yeah, there should be something. And so really, I invented the first sports bra because I was solving my own problem. And as I said, I really loved running, even though I had never been like all those girls that were tennis champs and out there playing hockey and field hockey and all that. And part of that reason was my relationship with my body growing up was not necessarily a great one. I have epilepsy, and epilepsy means you have seizures. And so I never knew when my body would do what, to me, as a young woman, felt like a betrayal. All of a sudden, boom, I was gone. My body was, and I mean, this is self-reflection a million years later, that has me understanding what was going on. But so running really allowed me to become friends with my body again. And So I said, okay, if I like, I started running. I loved it. I made the bra and thought, well, if I like this, maybe other women will. My sister wanted it. I thought it'd be a nice little mail order business on the side, because I'd actually gone back to school, which had been interrupted again, like so many women. I had to stop school, so I thought I was going back to finish my 4-year degree at college. I was a young woman in the middle of a divorce, and because of the epilepsy, I didn't drive, and so how am I going to make a living? And also, and I was an artist at the time and working part-time, and I was a nice little mail order business on the side. Boy, was I wrong. We put an ad in a Running Times magazine. It said, because I thought, and we got orders like crazy. I had to quit my part-time job. I had to quit school. And all of a sudden we were in business, and the business just took off. And it changed my life. It changed my life in more ways. I mean, the sports bra became an iconic object. It's now in the Smithsonian Museum of American History, not just the sports bra, but also not just our original jog bra, but also all the company that I ran out early history and records. It's also in the Metropolitan Museum of Art's costume collection, where they have a little tag on it that says "Revolutionary piece of women's underwear." And it's touted as an iconic symbol of women's liberation. I had no idea that that's what was happening when I did this. And when I wrote Unleash the Girls, it was just a year ago. And people say, why did you write the story of inventing the sports bra more than 40 years after you did it? And I said, because it took me that long to realize the importance of this thing. This wasn't just about making a garment and then building a business around it, although that was part of it. But what happened to me, the fact that becoming physically active changed me. Running empowered me. It made me friends with my body. It gave me the strength and the courage to get that divorce, to go back to school, to say yes to that business, to go through all the changes that happened during that period of time. That wasn't just my experience. In 1972, Title IX happened. Title IX was the federal program that said that money that went to educational institutions for sports programs for men and boys, the same amount of money had to go for women and girls. And that was great, because then it said, oh, their teams and activities had to be the same for girls as guys if you want this federal money. And that helped a lot, but that couldn't take away the embarrassment and self-consciousness and discomfort that girls were feeling if they wanted to go on the field, if they wanted to be a part of that team. 5 years later, in 1977, the sports bra did that. It helped with that. It allowed those girls to go out there. And they had that same experience of feeling strong, able, empowered. And there are studies now out that have been done over the years that show the dramatic increase in women's participation in all different kinds of sports. And I'm not just talking about team sports, I'm talking about being active. And the result of that is being, I'm going to use that word again, empowered, self-confident, able. You know, so in 1977, I came up with this product. I figured out how to make it. But it wasn't easy. You know, starting this business, running it, it was not easy. I took on business partner. It was not a happy partnership. I lost control of the business for a period of time. And this was a woman. And so my ideas of, again, it was the 70s, you know. I was a weekend hippie. We didn't believe, you know, power was about oppression and, you know, watch out. We had this thing of don't trust anyone over 30 and question authority, you know, all those old bumper stickers from back then. And I bought into it all. And so here I was, just, you know, we had a tagline when we started the business, by women, for women, you know, a product for women and by women and business run by women. And yet we were often at each other's throats. And that was a wake-up call. And so how do you deal with that? What do you do? How did we do it? And what I came to realize, and what Unleash the Girls is really about, is about relationships and reflection and growth and what it really takes to succeed and what success even means. Oh, by the way, I mean, because when you talk about, I mean, one of the things I say in the book is everything's about relationships. And the most important relationship is with yourself. You know, if you're lying to yourself about what you care about or what really matters, you're automatically lying to everybody else. And you just don't realize it right away. And that's a rabbit hole that too many people go down for too long. But, you know, people often ask me, why did you wait to write this book, The Story of the Invention of the Sports Bra, 40 years later? And they think that it's just the story of how I built the business, you know, how I invented the bra, you know, because it's a funny story and a cute and funny story because the first prototype really was 2 jock straps cut apart and sewn back together again so that the jock cup became, you know, breast cups, and really was. And then we got different fabric and made it a much better prototype and got it manufactured. Anyway, it's and all that's in there, how we did that and how I built the business and learned all about that. All that's there. But what's also there is the fact that unless you're willing to grow personally and challenge your own assumptions about yourself and look at that sort of ingrained thing of now I'm supposed to do this, or now I'm supposed to do that. Unless you can do that, your business isn't going to succeed and succeed. Forget, you know, that's the wrong word. It's going to grow. It's not going to grow. I used to teach classes in entrepreneurship, and I talk about how you set goals and you think, oh boy, you know, you look forward and you think, boy, if I can just get there, then I will have made it. And you work and you plan and you get there. and you say, wow, I've arrived, here I am. And you realize that what you thought was the ceiling is just the floor of the next level. You know, you go, whoa, there's a whole other world here. And that's true in life as well as business. And so I wrote Unleash the Girls 40 plus years after the fact because it taught me so much. We ran that business for 12 years as a private business before we sold to a major corporation. And if running the business, building and running the business was like getting my master's and my MBA, selling it was like getting my PhD. And it was a real learning experience. And through it all, you know, at first I thought this difficult partnership with my business partnership taught me so much, taught us both so much. I have to say, we even hired a couples counselor at one point and said, okay, let's work, you know, how are you this way and how are you that way, and how does it, what are both of our strengths and what are our weaknesses? And because we both wanted the business to succeed. It was like the business was our baby and we wanted it to succeed. But the message I want people to take away from reading Unleash the Girls is, you know, it wasn't about the sisterhood or the brotherhood, because as much as thinking that way is about bonding, it's also polarizing, because we are all one species. We are humanity. And we need to be more thoughtful and more kind and more gracious. That's so easy to say and not always so easy to do. And that, you know, one of the things that's bandied about a lot these days is this whole, you know, people talk about compassion. Let's be more compassionate. Let's be more compassionate. And what about self-compassion? You know, that's one of the things I've been thinking about lately today, and not today as in, hello, it's Tuesday, but these days, and especially for women. I think especially for women, to be as compassionate to oneself as we are to others is not always so easy. The other thing I want to just interject here is that the other reason why it took me 40 plus years to write Unleash the Girls is that that whole journey of creation that the sports bra business was took me to a place when I left the business. I left my baby. I sold it and I left. My business partner chose to stay with the new corporation and learn about corporate America. Well, not me. I said, I'm going to go back into the studio and try and figure out who I am beyond this. And so what I asked myself was, what really matters? You know, I had relative health. You know, I was dealing with my epilepsy and I had sold my business. What really matters? And it was one of those moments that you remember in life. I was standing in my new studio, looking out on this beautiful vista. I mean, it was springtime in Vermont, and which is very brief. And the light was filtering through a certain way, and I heard a bird call, and I had this thought, about how beautiful it was, that moment was. And that sort of beauty was eternal. That experience was eternal. And that was what really matters. I thought about that. I thought, how is that? Huh? I have to think about that. And I literally spent the next 10 years studying and thinking about that. I actually finally went back to school, got a graduate degree in culture and spirituality, actually. And the emphasis was on the importance of true beauty. And my first book, before Unleash the Girls, was about beauty. Have I already held this one up? Did I hold this up? This is because what I figured out, what this is about, is the fact that, well, the poet John O'Donohue said it perfectly. Because my idea, my aha moment, was not new. This is in the wisdom traditions. Whole cultures have been built around the importance of beauty and experiencing it primary in the culture. And the poet John O'Donohue said, I'm paraphrasing, all current crises can be can be traced back to the degradation of beauty. Right, in our current culture, what we do is we've replaced authentic beauty with glamour. Glamour is a trick, it's an illusion, it's not real, it doesn't last. And authentic beauty, like that bird call, like that, how the light was hitting that day, doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter how you are, that sticks. And if all of our efforts, our actions, our thoughts, if we use nourishing that, creating that as our yardstick of what really matters, that keeps balance in the world. The Diné, the Navajo culture, was centered around that originally. Science, even physics, even supports this. I'm not enough of a scientist or a physicist to have been able to be able to talk about that. Really, that would be a fun podcast. That would be a fun get a few of those guys on to talk about the importance of true beauty. And actually, I've toyed with the idea of trying to put together a book of essays about that. But so after I sold my business, I went back to graduate school, and because it was important to me, what really matters. Because it wasn't, for me, it wasn't business success, it wasn't even making art. Because I will tell you, it's the process of making art that is where true beauty lies. And so the book that I wrote, Beauty is, I say as action, because it is a verb. And, you can blah, blah, blah. We all sit around here, blah, 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 whether it's over coffee with our friends or whatever. It's blah, blah, blah. How do you actually do it? So what I wanted to do in Beauty as Action is do that. And so as I was sitting at my computer going, tap, 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 these practices just came through, like how you actually practice true beauty. For instance, one of them is really obvious: practice seeing. And by seeing is a metaphor for perceiving. And I just saw something today that was talking about how our perceptions dictate how we take something on, like whether something is traumatic or not has a lot to do with how we perceive it. And I just kind of laughed to myself because, this is practice seeing. For instance, sometimes when I talk about this or do a little seminar on it, I'll ask someone in the audience, I'll say, what color is the inside of your shoes? People don't notice. We're on automatic pilot a lot of the time. And a lot of times automatic pilot is very useful, but a lot of times it is deadening. And that is not useful. We're not hearing. We're not seeing. We're not feeling. When I wrote Beauty is Action in 2017, I think. Well, no, I wrote it for years and years and years. I published it in 2017. And after that, I started reading about, or becoming more familiar with, what I should say, mindfulness. And a lot of this is just mindful practices. And another one of the practices is being in awe, choosing to be in wonder. And a lot of times that sounds like, oh, what does that mean? And I'll say to someone, well, when was the last time you were really offended by something? A little offense, like someone cut in front of you in traffic and you went, oh, what a jerk. Well, rather than being offended by that, like, try being in awe. Like, wow, why did he choose to do that? That's an interesting choice. Whoa. And many of us know now that how those decisions about how we're going to react changes everything in your body, your blood pressure, your nervous system, everything.
It's so funny as you talk about this idea of being mindful and true beauty. I shared in other conversations that I am and have been in the beauty industry for over 30 years. And those kinds of conversations have definitely taken place. What beauty is, because I know for that angle, beauty can be extremely disempowering. It's extremely limiting and narrow. And so when you talk about mindfulness, even in unleashing the girls and creating that bra, it's about creating a life that
Absolutely.
actually lines up with the kind of life you want to live. And that's kind of what I'm capturing from what you're sharing.
Absolutely. 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 It's so annoying that when you use the word beauty, people always jump to shallow. They think that beauty's about shallow, trivial, and they think of cosmetics and trickery. It drives me nuts. And the other thing about the sports bra and how these two are oddly linked together. I mean, I had no idea I was going to go on this path, this journey, is that one of the reasons why the sports bra became a feminist icon is that bras have historically been designed and constructed by men to support the fashion industry and having clothes hang a certain way. They have not been about having the woman's breasts be comfortable or supported. I mean, let's remember Howard Hughes and Rosalind Russell, where he devised a whole bra, the cantilever bra, so her breasts would be lifted up and exposed in a particular costume. And so so bras traditionally have been very much about the male gaze and making, yes. And the sports bra has now been credited with launching this whole athleisure industry, which is about the athletic wear becoming streetwear in essence. But underneath it all is the fact that there are whole generations of young women now who assume that sports bra silhouette, now I'm not necessarily talking about functional sports bras, I'm talking about that sports bra silhouette, which is comfortable, soft, breathable, comfortable is the key word. Of course, that's what they wear. That's what they wear. They're not wearing those lacy lift, separate, push them up things at all. When you put sports bras into Google and hit images, this whole array of different kinds of sports bras comes up. Everything from industrial strength, serious, down to these strappy, sexy little things that my 15-year-old great niece is wearing underneath her prom dress. So that's why sports bras have literally changed how women think about their relationship with their breasts, or don't think, and certainly the way I was raised to think about them. And that's one of the reasons, that was one of the impetus for me. The Smithsonian putting it in their museum, having all these interviewers talk to me about why, how, and beginning to understand that the power of having the proper support and bringing so many women into being athletic and active, all of these things converged on me, and I thought, they need to understand this story, the true story behind how all this happened, that it wasn't all nicey-nicey, it wasn't easy. Women's stories need to be told by the women who lived them. And because at the same time, all the Me Too movement was happening, and all these women were coming forward and telling their stories. And men are not the only perps. So can I say that? Do you know that in the workplace, women are more likely to bully other women than men are likely to bully other men?
Oh, yeah.
And this is because of oppression. And women feel like, since they feel oppressed by the dominant culture, and so they feel like there aren't enough pieces of the pie to go around. They feel like their piece of the pie is going to be smaller. So they're competing against these other women. And so this idea of the sisterhood and women helping women, it isn't always like that. And somehow, if you want to talk about that, all of a sudden you're a bad guy. And I are a bad gal. So what I want to get across, and Unleash the Girls starts to approach this, is screw the pie. Let's reinvent the pie. You know, the universe is ever expanding. Let's have a pie that is always expanding. Why do we have to have this idea that there's only so much to go around?
I love
All
that
the time.
idea. I am right on board with that because I feel what you're saying. Um, I think I've experienced it somewhat even in this podcasting world that I'm in. You know, it's kind of like people get threatened. Maybe they worry about someone else's light shining more than theirs. You know, that whole saying right now that's really popular about lighting someone else's candle doesn't dim yours. And I do agree with that, but I am finding there's a very subtle thing that women do and have done. And this is over my lifetime. And I'm sure every woman has this experience where we're not on the same team. We're saying we're on the same team, you know, hashtag me too, and women helping women and women empowering women. And there are those who do. There are those who do. But our humanity has a side to it that sometimes has a little bit more power than we'd like it to have. And that is that sense of less than, you know, that sense of scarcity, competition. Somehow we're in some kind of, I call it like a virtual video game, right? It's like we're all running around in a virtual video game and some of us aren't aware that we're in the game, and other people, you know, um, feel that. And I try not to focus on that that attitude about it. I try to think it's a shame that someone cannot accept another person and make and hold a space for them. Because I know for me, and maybe Lisa, you can confirm this, that when we choose to step out in that expansive mindset, yeah, sometimes things happen to us that kind of suck. Maybe we get taken advantage of. But me personally, me as a person, in my heart, in my mind, and in my growth comes when I step outside of that mindset.
I I know that to be true. I know that, and I have been taken advantage of. I
Mhm.
read the book. Read Unleash the Girls. I I sent equal shares to two other women, and one woman bought the other woman out without my knowing and came back and said, "I'm majority shareholder now." And it was so difficult for me. It was, I mean, for years,
It's
for
got to be
years, and
heartbreaking.
heartbreaking.
Hmm.
But eye-opening, and you know, I use this term shadow teachers.
Hmm.
When you learn things um, because of difficulties, epilepsy. I've had you know, the blessings I have because of what I have learned and had to confront and deal with. I mean, I'm a very creative problem solver because I've had to be. You know, I'm either not gonna, I'm either gonna go without, or I'm gonna figure out how to go around. You know, um, there is enough light,
Mm.
and there must be dark.
For there to
There,
be light, there has to be dark, right?
and you know, there is there, in order for it to be, for creation to happen, there has to be destruction.
Mm.
You know, you have to take one thing apart to use those parts to build something. You know, it's like Legos. um, our particular Western culture doesn't like to think about that. We're not friends with death, you know,
Mm.
and destruction. We aren't. um, have you seen, but this is totally off, but Have you seen the animated movie Coco?
Yes.
I think I love that movie. I think it does such a good job. Speaking of death, dealing with um, how to hold how to hold that. Anyway, it's just an aside.
Well, but is it an aside? Because I think that the flow of thought, at least for me, makes sense because you're talking about the yin and the yang, the push and the pull of living life, right? And what that means to you, like you were saying earlier, right? Like what's important. And
Yep.
when we confront that the trajectory towards success, whatever that is, because, we just talked about that too. What is success? You get to decide what success is, but there is a push and a pull. And that accepting the death of something, it doesn't have to be a physical death. But when you were taken advantage of in your own business, there's a death of an ideal. There's a death of I
Trust.
guess an expectation or a belief that we really are in this thing together. So I think more existentially, I suppose, that your thought process made complete sense because it's the same idea that this is a thread in our lives of things growing and dying, of things being built and of things being destroyed. And it includes our relationships, our beliefs, our mindsets, maybe even our bodies, right? Because even in bodybuilding, you built a sports bra. Once you have a good sports bra and you're a busty woman, then you can build muscle. But building muscle even requires breaking down muscle. So, I mean, really, you didn't go off on a tangent. You just brought a different perspective, like we were looking at a 360, like you're painting a still life at the moment, right? You're taking life and
Yeah.
putting it into a context. It just happens to be
Yeah.
sports bras. And so I think that your story, the reason you wrote that book 40 years later, really is a retrospect on that cycle of life and death, of ideas and mindset and who you were and who you had to become. That's how I see it.
Uh, Thank you. Yes, yeah, very much so. And it's how I ended up understanding that authentic beauty, true beauty, was my yardstick to measure what really matters. And it's been so helpful for me.
How does your art facilitate that same idea? Because art is a creation, but there still is a push pull when you're creating something, right? The person you become, I'm sure, infuses the art. I see your mood board back there, your inspiration board that's behind you. I love that. So, this journey that you've taken, how has that impacted you as an artist?
Uh, Tremendously, actually. Uh, I go back and forth between expressing myself visually and writing. And as I said earlier, artists talk about something called the flow, being in the flow, which is the process of creating. And it's not the end product, whether the end product is a book or a collage or a drawing, it's the process of of making. That
Mhm.
is what it's all about.
And isn't that life in a nutshell?
Yes. Yeah, there you go.
It's a good
Yes.
analogy for life.
Yeah, it is not about the destination. It is about, and we've heard this, but really, it really is not about the destination. It is about the getting there, the journey. It's so trite, but it is so true.
Yeah. Well, but here you are having written a book 40 years after doing something that has become iconic without even knowing that you were going to be doing something iconic. And I think that's a really cool message that we just need to do what's on our heart to do, and however it's interpreted. This is very true with art, wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
It's really in the expression of that call that you feel in your heart, that's what's important. How people take it is outside of our control, you know. So let me ask you this. If people wanted to get in touch with you, I don't know if you sell your art and your books, where can people contact you, Lisa?
My website, which is just my name, www.lisalindahl.com. My books can be found on any online retailer. And if you want to go to your local bookstore, you can ask them. They might have it, or you can ask them to order it. They can order it from whoever they order books from. And that's how you can find me.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you so much, Lisa, for coming on today and for sharing your heart and your message and just the journey that you've walked. Thank you for sharing that with us today.
Well, thank you so much, Gina. It's really been a pleasure.
Wonderful. And friends, if you subscribe down below, that way you don't miss any more stories. If you've already subscribed, thank you so much. Please share this with your friends. The message today is really about living a life of mindfulness, finding what's success and beauty for you, engaging in that. And you know what? Trust that process. I know it's difficult. Sometimes we want to get to the destination so quickly. But as Lisa so gently shared, it's not about the destination. It really is about the journey. So in these times of interesting, the whole world is going through something together. And I think that brings a lot of perspective to our everyday lives. So like Lisa said, we are truly one humanity. We are experiencing right now, as this is being recorded, we are all on lockdown all the way around the world. We're not supposed to go anywhere. We're not supposed to engage with other people. And I think that's a really good time for us to really recognize what's important. So take what life is bringing to you right now, hold some space for it, figure out what you're supposed to learn, and trust the process, my friends. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to sharing more stories with you in the future. Take care.